How's it going, guys? Missing No here, and today we're doing yet another Kaijudo deck profile. So some backstory for this one. I was going through my binder, and I had a whole page full of just Magglecax. I'm like, this card's really, really good. I want to do something with this. So I went on YouTube, looked up all these different things involving Magglecax. I got a video by David Woodward that I had tried building in the past. I personally wasn't a fan of it because I guess it's not my playstyle. I saw a video of the Rangers Dojo playing the exact same deck, and then the next video really piqued my interest, and it was uploaded by German Duel Masters, and is being played by Loui, who is a person I've mentioned multiple times before on this channel, and you've probably seen him down below in the comments. He was playing a deck called Water Dark Nature Agaryx Control. Like, this deck sounds super, super cool. So I watched the video over and over and over again. And I kind of built the deck as I was seeing the cards and tried to figure out the ratios. And I messaged him in the Discord and I presented it to him. I'm like, hey, is this kind of what you were playing? And he remembered a good chunk of it. And we kind of went back and forth for a little while discussing changes we could make to the deck. And that is what I'm presenting today. So this deck is originally played by Loui, built by one of Loui's friends, and then I'm just kind of here presenting it after Loui and I have done some more changes to it. So anyway, let's get into this deck profile. To start things off, we play 3 copies of Cyber Trader. This is a tier for 1000 creature that when it enters the battle zone, you can draw a card, and then if you do, then you draw a card. The whole point of water in this deck is to just draw as many cards as possible. I lied. There's one card that is water in this deck that does not draw you cards. Spoilers, it's Blo Warden. And so the whole point of this deck is just draw as many cards as possible and get as much mana ramp as possible to start playing big things and recurring things. It's pretty neat. Next we play 3 copies of Seer. This card is a 2 for 1000 creature that when it enters the battle zone, you can draw a card, and if you do, you can discard a card. Oh shit, it's literally the exact same card as Cyber Trader. Again, like I said, you just want to draw as many cards as possible. Drawing cards to dig deeper, and then you can discard cards to use later while recurring back with Agrix is super, super fun. It establishes just the whole point of the deck, as soon as turn 2. And I really like Seer and Cyber Trader as leading cards for this deck. We also play 3 copies of Grudge Weaver, 2 for 1000 with blocker and guard. And if it were to die, your opponent has to choose a card in their hand and discard it. So you can protect your shields, protect a creature maybe, and then they lose a resource in the process. That's really good. And to wrap up our 2 drops, we also play 3 copies of Sprout. Like I said, we care very much so about ramping on this deck. So I want to say most of, if not all of the green in this deck, besides Root Trap, involves getting more mana in some way. So yeah, Sprout is also staple for this deck. For our 3 drops, we play 3 copies of Blo Warden, 3 for 4000 blocker with guard, and if it dies, it goes to your mana zone. Again, really good. I really, really like Blo Warden. I think it's a really cool card, kind of slept on. Maybe it's because nature and water aren't necessarily played together all too terribly much, but I seem to play it in quite a bit together, so who knows. And we're also playing 3 copies of Goop Striker, 3 for 2000, Slayer, and when it dies, it goes to the mana zone. So they drop something big and spooky, crash into it, they die, their creature dies, and you get mana out of it. So Goop Striker, also again, one of those absolutely fantastic cards. And the last level 3 is 3 copies of Logo Scan. This is a card that Loui and I had talked about together. We had considered playing Finbar, but we decided there weren't enough attacking creatures in this deck to warrant playing Finbar to get all those draws. And Logo Scan just seems like kind of a better card for the situation that you would run into with this deck. So, yeah, 3 copies of Logo Scan. It's a weird choice, but it's working quite well. For the 4-drops, we play 3 copies of Underworld Stalker. 4 for 4,000 with Slayer. It can summon itself back from the discard pile, and whenever a creature would be sent to your opponent's discard pile from anywhere, it goes to the bottom of their deck instead. So they have to really, really dig for it, or have to search out that card altogether. No recurring things from their discard pile like we can do. So Underworld Stalker is kind of an interesting card. Like I said in every video I have it in, I prefer it more in standard format. But if I'm playing it in a deck, there's obviously a reason that we are and playing it at 3. I feel Underworld Stalker definitely is one of the better cards of this deck because you keep getting it back as a body, and that's super, super cool. I kind of wish there was more cards that just play themselves, but maybe that was a bit too powerful for the game. We play 3 copies of Bone Blades because it's Bone Blades. And we play 3 copies of Reap and Sow because, as I stated before, the whole point of this deck is to draw and ramp as much as possible in the opening turns to start getting your bigger plays set up super early. And this card draws and sets up mana, so it's a win-win there. Okay, so here's where the deck gets kind of weird. We just got done showing you the 4-drop cards. So, naturally, next is the 7-drop cards. So we're playing 2 copies of World Waker Omgoth. This is a 7 for 13,000 Vortex evolution that evolves on top of 2 of your water and or nature creatures. It has Triple Breaker. When this creature enters the battle zone, you put your entire hand in your into your mana zone. And then whenever this creature attacks your opponent, for each card you have less than 5, you can draw a card. So basically when you attack, you just draw 5. That's worded really weird. I'm sure there's a reason for it, and I'm sure that kind of comes up in a ruling somewhere. That's worded really stupid. Basically, you attack your opponent and you draw until you have 5. This card sets up so much. I've dropped this card on like turn 4. Was it turn 4? It was turn 4 or 5. I put 4 cards from my hand into the mana zone, attacked, drew 5 more cards, and the next turn I started dropping things like Agrix, evolving other things, and it was just super, super good. This is definitely a weird card, but I kind of wish I got to play it more. I want to bump it to 3, honestly, but there's really no need, especially because playing cards in this deck is kind of an issue on its own, especially the Vortex evolutions, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. Our next level 7 is 2 copies of Scaradorable the Behemoth. So this card is a 7 for 12,000 Vortex evolution that evolves on top of your natures and or darkness creatures. It has Triple Breaker, and when it enters the battle zone, you Terror Pit a thing, and then you Root Trap a thing. So this card is super cool. It just removes 2 things immediately, and that is super nice. Both of these cards being Triple Breakers when they come out is also really, really good. So one card gives you like a massive mana bump, draws you 5 cards and breaks 3 shields. Another one just removes 2 threats from your opponent's side of the field and breaks 3 shields. These cards are really cool. Scaradorable Behemoth is another card I want to play 3 of at something. This really probably isn't the deck to do it in, but that'd be really cool if I could. Speaking of Terra Pitting a thing, we also play 3 copies of Terra Pit. And boy, wouldn't you know it, we also play 3 copies of Root Trap. So, yeah, those are our 7 drops, and they are pretty good. To wrap things up, we're playing 3 copies of Grand Manipulator Agrix. It is an 8 for 9,000 plus, double breaker. When it enters the battle zone, choose creatures in your discard pile up to level of 6, and play them for free. And then whenever this creature attacks, you can choose any number of your other creatures, and those creatures you target, you send them to the discard pile, And this card gains plus 5,000 power and breaks an additional shield for every single one of those. So what I like to do is bring back like my Tide Seers and my Cyber Traders, draw and discard a bunch of cards so I can start fueling maybe the next Agaryx play. And then I can either leave them out in the next turn and do some Goth shenanigans, or you can just attack with Agaryx, send those 3 back to the discard pile, and then you are swinging for all 5 of their shields at once, and you're at 24,000 power, so even if they have a Haven will stop you, but you get to kill a Haven. So either way, that's a win-win for you. But yeah, Agrix is super, super good. I really, really like it. And odds are the next deck profile will also be an Agaryx video, so I'm sorry in advance. And the last card we play is 2 copies of Swift Regeneration. I kind of want to bump this card up to 3 because it fixes one of the main issues with the deck, which I'll discuss here in a minute. But yeah, Swift Regeneration, for 8 mana, you can choose any number of creatures in your mana zone at a total level of 7 or less, and then put them in the battle zone. And until the start of your next turn, all of your creatures that have more than 0 power can't be banished. So as long as they're not, dropping to 0 with some like absolute darkness bullshit, they just live. So what's really fun about this is if you had to charge your Goth or your Seer Durable Behemoth, you can pull it back out with Regeneration, just evolve it if you have the proper materials out. Actually, give me just a second. We'll start discussing the issues of the deck. Okay, so the weak points of the deck are also the strongest points of the deck, being Scare Adorable, the Behemoth, and World Waker Goth. Both these cards fulfill certain roles. Scare Adorable, the Behemoth, breaks 3 shields, and like I said, it's a Terra Pit and a Root Trap on play. That's really good. Goth, Triple Breaker, and gives you a bunch of mana and lets you draw up to 5 cards every time it attacks. That's also really, really good. The main issue is actually their strongest point is that they share evolution bait in the form of nature cards. But the issue with that is the only nature cards that we play that aren't them are your Goop Strikers and your Blo Wardens. And those go to your mana zone once they've fulfilled their purpose, which is kind of why I want to bump up Swift Regeneration to 3. Because once they've fulfilled their purpose, there's no easy way to get back Evo bait for both of those creatures, because Agrix can't pull those back out. Agrix can, however, pull back Underworld Stalker if you really want to, as well as Grudge Weaver for the Behemoth plays. And it can also pull back the Cyber Traders and the Tide Seers for the Goth plays. The issue mostly comes when you're trying to play them on curve. Like, if you have them in your hand, the chances of you being able to play them immediately based off of what is set up on your field is probably pretty low. Because usually it's going to be some sort of like combination of like one of your draw cards, maybe your Weaver, and then these are probably going to be doing something in your mana zone at that point. There's just been a lot of instances where I've had a Vortex evolution, but I only have one of the pieces. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've like been able to like, oh cool, I can go into Behemoth, right? It's like, no. I have the nature in Blo Warden, but then I have a Tide Seer or a Cyber Trader instead, and then I just can't do anything with that. And then things start getting a little bit dicey there. Same thing with Goth. It's like, yeah, cool, I can have like a Blo Warden or a Goop out, but then I'll probably have like a Grudge Weaver or an Underworld Stalker. And again, that doesn't help with Goth as well. So that's just something to note with the deck. There's some times where your fields aren't necessarily ideal for your hands, and you'll have to really work towards getting out these guys to help facilitate your plays a little bit more, which is probably like a huge issue for the deck. But I don't know, every time I've kind of run into a situation, and even if you watch Louie's video, he cheeses out a win with like the most perfectly timed Scaradol of the Behemoth. I think 2 out of those 3 games. And I can't tell you how many times I've also done that. So it definitely seems like an issue that needs to be addressed. But then, like, you just come out of nowhere and you win anyway. So I don't know. That's kind of a. I'm not really sure where to go with that. It's kind of weird interactions with the deck. But real quick, we can also go over some cards that we kind of discussed or had like some sort of mention at some point. So one of the cards that Loui and I had discussed was General Finbar. Um, we don't play it, obviously. For those who don't know what Finbar is for some reason. 6 for 4,000. When it enters the battle zone, you target a creature and bounce it. And then every time one of your other creatures attacks, you get to draw a card. You'd think this card would fit in perfectly with the deck because all we want to do is like draw as much as possible with our water. And we are lacking 6 cost cards. But when we were discussing it, we feel that the cards that can attack aren't really worth attacking with because it's stuff like your Tide Seers and your Goop Strikers, which you want to like keep to revenge kill into something, and then Underworld Stalker, which you kind of want to keep, to revenge kill things and slay with those. So Finbar didn't necessarily feel like it was the correct choice for this deck, which is why we chose to go with the logo scans. So there's that. I was kind of thinking about this on the way home. Gighorn Charger is definitely a card we could probably consider playing. It's a really good nature card. It searches your deck for all your high level cards, so you could play this. Search out your Goth, your Behemoth, your Agaryx, and then the next turn, if you have the other materials you need, you could evolve it into either Goth or Behemoth, or you can play your Agaryx, pull back the other pieces you need to make those other plays later. I feel Gighorn Charger definitely has a place in this deck somewhere. I'm not entirely sure where, but that's something else that we can consider. Another one we consider but I don't have with me at the moment is Johnny Darkseed. Again, more mana ramp, and it's another nature creature that can help with the evolution baits. But by adding Johnny Darkseed would have increased our multi-civ count even further, and the deck is already running enough multi-civs. I feel that kind of would like mess with like the ratios. I was playing this deck with my daughter the other day, and she absolutely destroyed me by playing the Light Fire Nature Mega Bug deck because her deck just went super wide, super quick, and we couldn't really handle it. So another card we had considered was Tendril Grasp. But then at that point, all of your cards that you need are going to your mana zone. So if you wanted to play Tendril Grasp, you might want to consider bumping up the switch regenerations up to 3 as well, because then you have no way of getting back your Tide Seers and your Cyber Traders and stuff like that. So that's also something to consider. And one of the last cards I want to talk about is Dracothane of the Abyss. In the video where I saw Loui playing this deck, they were playing Dracothane. This card came out in Dragon Strike and Furnace. It's a 9 for 12,000 Triple Breaker. And when this creature enters the battle zone, you can choose up to 2 non-evolution creatures that cost 4 or less and put them in the battle zone. So this card is both really good, but also kind of power crapped. So Dracothane can pull back your entire low end like area. So it can pull back your Underworld Stalkers. It can pull back your Goop Strikers. No, actually Goop Striker wouldn't be there unless it was discarded. But your Grudge Weavers, your Tide Seers, your Cyber Traders, stuff like that, it can pull it back. But again, you only pull back 2. And unless you're pulling back double Underworld Stalker, it's not necessarily worth it when you can pull back like play sets of Tide Seers, Grudge Weavers, and stuff like that with Grand Manipulator Agaryx. So Dracothane had a spot at one point, but Dracothane has been power crept, unfortunately, because I think this card is super cool. I wish I could find something to play Dracothane in, but unfortunately, this also is not the deck for it. But it is what it is. This deck is really fun. I've been enjoying the hell out of it. I'm constantly thinking of other ways we could possibly improve this deck. If you guys have other ideas to help me and Loui with this build, absolutely give us a shout. Reach out. It would be super cool to maybe work on this a little bit more. But yeah, that's the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, shout out to Loui. Super cool dude. He's always in the comments trying to spark up a conversation, ask me my ideas on certain cards that I play, always throwing out his suggestions on how to maybe make my decks a little bit better. And yeah, really, really cool person. Check out the German Duel Masters YouTube channel because I want to say that's where he does most of his stuff. And he's super cool. So go over and say hi. Anyway, this is the deck. It's been kind of a long one. And I'll catch you guys later.